In today's video, we're going to discuss the possibility if the Maple Leafs should be trading one of their core four players for a top, legit number one defenseman. Plus, could Carter Hart be available on a trade market? Could he end up with a team like the Ottawa Senators? Plus, we have lots of other coaching vacancy, GM vacancy updates as well. The World Hockey Championships concluded today. We'll discuss who won the medals, as well as the Dallas Stars continue to survive and continue to push the Western Conference Final into Game 6. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. First up, of course, we saw the Dallas Stars continue to survive last night, pushing the Dallas Stars to Game 6 of the Western Conference Final. Of course, the Vegas Golden Knights won the first 3 games, and the Dallas Stars, the last 2 games, have managed to win and survive and push this series forward, even though Captain Jamie Benn has been out of the lineup due to suspension. He will be eligible to return. I would imagine they'll put him back in, but you got to wonder if they're even giving the slightest thought of leaving him out. I mean, I doubt they will, given the role he plays on the team, but they've really come alive and done a lot better. Youngster Ty Dellandrea scored a couple of huge goals in the third period to help Dallas secure the victory. Jason Robertson continues to be hot, has been able to find the net more frequently here in the last few games. Jake Ottinger was pretty good, and overall Dallas played a much better game. It was pretty close, obviously, through 2 periods and into later into the third when Dellandrea got the massive goals here to put him ahead. But obviously, they'll continue to push here. We'll see if they can force a Game 7. As I mentioned before, in round 3, it hasn't happened for a team to be up 3-0 and lose the series. But the Vegas Knights themselves did lose a series where they were up 3-1 in the past, and that was against the San Jose Sharks. And on that team was Joe Pavelski and Peter DeBoer. So we'll see if Pavelski and DeBoer can continue to cause headaches here for Vegas. The World Hockey Championships concluded today, as I mentioned as well. We had quite a game earlier today with Latvia defeating the United States in overtime 4-3 to win their first ever medal at this tournament. I believe normally the best they've ever done was around 7th place in the tournament. And not only did they improve and have a good tournament, but they won a medal for the first time, which was absolutely amazing, an incredible feat. This team started off really slow, losing their first 3 games. So to do that and to come back and to get into the medal round is pretty difficult, pretty rare, especially for a team like Latvia who does not have a history of comebacks or success under its belt. So that's a phenomenal story. Captain Kaspers Dogvins, the former Ottawa Senator, obviously had a big role with the team. Current Flame prospect and former Maple Leaf and Senator Christian Rubens scored 2 huge goals, including the tying goal and OT winner. Rubens, it's hard to, kind of label him as a prospect. He's technically like 25 years old now and has mostly been a minor leaguer. Obviously was with the Senators briefly, spent a few years with the Leafs organization, and then most recently with the Flames. Finished things up with the Wranglers in the American Hockey League, and then head over to the World Championships after their season wrapped up. And he just had a heck of a finish there for Latvia. So that's a tremendous story. Great to see. Canada battled Germany in a gold medal game, with Canada coming out on top at the end of 2 periods. It was tied 2-2. Pretty good game for the most part. I'd say Canada was probably the stronger team, but overall Germany held their own and was right in it for sure. But Canada dominated the 3rd period. Some big goals there. From Captain Tyler Toffoli. Sammy Blake continued to play a huge role for Canada, scoring another big goal as well. Mackenzie Weegar was phenomenal through the entire tournament, and Sam Montembeault was remarkable between the pipes as well. I believe he had a 6-1 record. Great goals against, great save percentage. A lot of these guys might have had tough seasons in the NHL, but they're going to be going home feeling a lot more confident about themselves with a gold medal around their necks, that's for sure. I mean, Andre Tourigny of the Coyotes was the head coach. One of the assistants was DJ Smith of the Senators. And a lot of the Calgary guys, Calgary had a tough year, so they had Weegar, Toffoli, Lucic. Sammy Blais had a tough year, but finished strong in St. Louis. And lots of other young guys on the team as well, like Krebs and Quinn from the Sabres, and countless others. Adam Fantilli had a highlight reel goal the other day, and he's only not even drafted yet. So Fantilli becomes only the 2nd player ever to win World Junior Gold and World Championship Gold in the same year. There's other players that are part of the Triple Gold Club, which is the World Juniors, the Olympics, and the World Championships, but he's only the 2nd player besides former Blackhawk captain and Team Canada member Jonathan Daves to win a World Junior and World Championship gold in the same year. So congrats to Canada, congrats to Adam Fantilli for that accomplishment, congrats to Latvia, congrats to the German team as well for being the silver medalist. The U.S. falls just short as well in finishing fourth. Obviously, the tournament's a little bit different, not having the Russian players there. And, of course, from year to year, you never know what you're going to get for NHL players, because it really boils down to who's in the playoffs, who's, early playoff exits. There's all kinds of factors there that you just don't know. Injuries play a role at the end of NHL seasons, and you're never going to get that tournament the absolute best players for every country. It's just not going to happen just because of the nature of how the season works. But overall, it's still a pretty solid tournament and a good outcome there for many of those teams. On to some other news, of which Elliotte Friedman will kind of ran through a bunch of stuff last night on the hockey game telecast in the second intermission, looking at a lot of the coaching and GM vacancies. One very interesting name he mentioned in Toronto, the Toronto Leafs general manager position. Of course, we know that Brad Treliving is getting a lot of attention. I think a lot of people think of him as the front runner, which he could be. I think he's the only, or one of the very few people who have interviewed in person from what we know so far. We've also heard Peter Chiarelli, Jason Modro, Mark Bergevin have been in the mix, but one name that Friedman mentioned that we hadn't heard yet until last night was former Sharks GM, which he was there forever, was Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson has got a ton of experience. Now, of course, he left the Sharks due to health reasons, vacated his GM position, took some time off, and we did report back, I want to say maybe a month or two ago, I can't remember exactly when it was, but that he was doing much better health-wise and was looking to get back into an NHL job. And he's certainly been in the mix, talking to teams for some of the open vacancies around the league. So it'll be real interesting to see if he becomes, one of the names that might be a strong consideration for this role. Obviously, he's used to being the main guy in charge between him and ownership, because he has such a big role with the Sharks for such a long time. So I don't know how the dynamic would work with him and Shanahan and the board of directors, but interesting nonetheless to see how that would work out and what his thoughts would be on how to shape the team moving forward. Now, some other openings, we get word as well that Friedman believes that the Columbus Blue Jackets might be one of the teams that have reached out to Patrick Waugh. Now, we've talked a bit about the New York Rangers gig and the possibility that Chris Drury had talked to his former teammate and that he might have been in the mix for that job. Well, right now, the Rangers job appears to be, a lot of people are saying that an announcement could come soon here in the next few days, but likely looking like Peter Laviolette. That looks like the direction that the Rangers are heading, but the Jackets are a team talking to Patrick Waugh, or at least want to speak to Patrick Waugh a little bit further. Now, of course, he's still coaching with the Quebec Ramparts, who won the Quebec League Championship and are currently participating in the Memorial Cup to crown Canada's World Hockey Junior Champions for the country. So we'll see what Waugh decides to do, and if they have further conversations once the tournament's done here in a few days. But obviously, Waugh would be a very interesting name behind the Columbus Blue Jackets bench, but it's quite apparent that he's very interested in getting back into an NHL role, and obviously some of these openings are very intriguing to him. When it comes to Calgary, we don't know a lot as of yet, but Friedman mentioned that at this point, with Conroy just being named general manager a couple days ago, that their search is underway and that they're going to give every opportunity to their internal candidates. Of course, they have Mitch Love, the Calgary Wranglers head coach, who's been two-time American Hockey League Coach of the Year. Doesn't have a ton of pro coaching experience, but the experience he does have has gone extremely well. So it's they have to determine if he's their guy or not, because if they don't give him the head coaching job, I would think they're going to be in danger in the near future to lose him, because a lot of other teams are taking notice. Like, he doesn't have a lot left to accomplish in the AHL. Like, there's more he could do, but he's already a two-time Coach of the Year in that league. I think he's looking pretty seriously about making the jump up. Of course, Ryan Huska and Kirk Muller also in the mix for that job. Although as much as they want to give those internal guys as every opportunity as possible, they certainly do plan to look externally and have a long list of names of people that they plan on contacting and chatting with. So we'll see where things go. In Washington, it's looking like Spencer Carberry, the assistant coach of the Maple Leafs, appears to be the front runner in Washington. But like, I've seen other reports that they thought maybe like a former coach there and a very experienced one, Bruce Boudreau, might be in the mix. But it seems to be, most people are saying Carberry or Jeff Halpern, who's the Tampa assistant coach. Now, I'm not sure what was going on with Jeff Halpern, but there was word that he was going to be interviewing, but wasn't going to be meeting with them until this coming week. I'm not sure if there was what the reasons were why things were delayed, but I know Carberry has already been in touch, and I think they've interviewed him at least once, if not twice. That's why a lot of people were feeling that they might not even get to the point that they talk further to help her, that they might just give him the job. But we'll have to wait and see. They have time to be patient here, so I don't expect much. I think the main announcement that seems most likely this week would be the Rangers job, and like I said, that's trending going towards Peter Laviolette. Now, we also have a signing as well. The Buffalo Sabres signed an important piece. Their 2019 first-round pick, Ryan Johnson, looks like a pretty promising defenseman. He was taken 31st overall in that draft and has played 4 years for the University of Minnesota. There were some that were concerned that, that the Sabres were going to lose him and that he wasn't going to sign and become a free agent. But they've got him wrapped up on a 2-year contract. So certainly that's worked out well for him. He's able to report to the American Hockey League. And then hopefully we'll see if he can have a chance at cracking the NHL roster next year or where things sit. We do know the Sabres want to add to their blue line this offseason, and he might be a piece that they don't have to pay anything for through free agency or trade that might be able to step in and help them out right away, or they may want to give him time in the American Hockey League. But I know there was some concern that he wouldn't sign, but obviously those concerns are kind of put to rest here and be able to move forward. Now, there's also another rumor going around about the Maple Leafs, and I've seen Elliot Friedman and James Muriel, the Athletic, both kind of make mention of this, but it sounds like there's some that are wondering, based on what they're hearing about the Leafs, that obviously we know Kyle Dubas is gone, and there's a GM change coming. We know that for sure. But there's a lot of talk that there could be a lot more changes coming within the front office, that there's a potential for a complete clear out and like a whole new crew. I mean, we're talking, a lot of other departments that are connected when it comes to, player personnel and scouting and all this other stuff. I mean, we've seen Jason Spezza resign after Dubas was let go. So those two guys are gone. They're bound to lose at least one assistant coach through other opportunities and promotional stuff that he can do. Like Spencer Carberry likely moves on to a head coach job. We know that assistant GM Brandon Pridham appears to be kind of like the interim guy for Shanahan, kind of holding things down while they make a decision on a full-time job. And doesn't sound like Pridham is going to be overly considered, even though he is a long-time cap specialist and could be a big asset for sure to retain. It just seems like essentially that Kyle Dubas had a major impact on the organization, and a lot of people love working with him, and that many in the organization are kind of still in shock and shook at what happened here, and that they may have a difficult time, working under a new plan, a new regime, new leader, and it might be time to do further changes within the organization. So we don't know, obviously, what's all going to end up taking place in Toronto. That's just speculation, because obviously a lot of people seem to be having a real hard time moving on from the Dubas dismissal here, which I understand. Kyle Dubas comes off as a real good person. They clearly loved working for him, saw his vision, saw what he wanted to do. But I mean, he's one person there. Like, I wouldn't think they'd have to kind of clear out tons of employees over one change like that. Like, yes, it's can be a shocking thing, whatever, but I don't know. That seems a little crazy, but that's what some people seem to think might be taking place. Now, we're going to talk a little bit further about the Leafs here in a moment, but first I want to touch on the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, new GM Danny Briere, of course, we know is likely going to consider many things this offseason. The Flyers are going to be a very interesting team. He made it clear he's not afraid of the rebuild. He made it clear that it could be a longer rebuild. He's going to do what's right and get this team back on track. Of course, they have Keith Jones as team president, John Tortorella as the head coach, who is very, very involved in player personnel decisions. We know that. And certainly this is going to be, a different approach that we haven't seen quite with this structure before. But Briere made it known, he was doing a radio interview, that he was quoted as saying that he was certainly very much open to training Carter Hart, that he felt that it was his job, that he absolutely had to listen, and he's open to doing anything that makes the team better on a longer term basis. So obviously, he is open to anything. So he made it well known that he's wide open for business. But he also cautioned everybody that he still feels that Carter Hart very well could be their goalie next year, and possibly even further, because he's not entirely convinced as of right now that any team is going to step up and give him a good enough offer that he's going to feel the need to accept. But essentially, he's like, it's his job to listen, and he has to take a look at everything. And there's nothing that's off the table with this team and this franchise right now, which is good to hear in a sense. But at the same time, like I said, unless a team comes really willing to probably overpay a little bit to really get Carter Hart, if they feel it really makes a huge difference for them, then he's probably going to be hesitant to pull the trigger. Now, I've seen Anthony DeMarco, who covers the Flyers for the fourthperiod.com, make note that he felt like the Ottawa Senators, for example, were a team that might make the best offer. This was just a chatter on Twitter. Obviously, there was other teams out there that were mentioned. I know one was the Buffalo Sabres, for example, and there's other teams we know are going to be looking for goaltending help this offseason. There's definitely not a lot of teams that are going to want to pay the price that the Flyers are going to be looking for, but we know there's going to be probably a handful of teams that would love the idea of acquiring a guy like Carter Hart. You could look at Ottawa for sure. You could look at Buffalo. You could look at Los Angeles, and there's others around the league as well that no doubt I want to take a look at things. If the Jets end up trading Connor Hellebuyck, they would be in the mix for a new goalie too. So there's not going to be any shortage of suitors. That much we do know. The Ottawa Senators are well positioned with prospects, draft capital, and even some young players on the roster that have already had a little bit of experience that they could put together probably a very interesting, tempting package for the Florida Panthers to consider. We do know that last year they went with Tano, Cam Talbot, and Anton Forsberg. Talbot did not work out. He's not coming back. He's a UFA. So obviously that job was open. Matt Sogard, the youngster from Denmark, stepped in way too early, mind you, in his career, but did an admirable job considering all things. But you could tell there was times when he looked really good, and there was times when you could tell he just wasn't quite ready and was getting a little bit over his head. So he could certainly use some more seasoning and development time for sure. Forsberg's under contract for a couple more years, ended up getting hurt with a serious injury, but will be back for training camp, which is good news. So certainly, a lot of Sens people are hoping that Forsberg bounces back, and at the very least can be part of a solid 1A, 1B type of tandem, depending on who else comes in between the pipes. A guy like Carter Hart came in, that would certainly take the pressure off Forsberg. Those two could work together nicely and allow Sogard some time to continue developing. He could be the number 3 and be called up if needed. And longer term, maybe the tandem could be Hart and Sogard another 1 to 2 years down the road. That would be, to me, in Ottawa, makes a ton of sense. And they have the assets to make it happen. Hart's not making a ton of money right now. His next contract's likely going to be more. And I'm sure that the Sens would have what they need in order for space and everything to make that happen. So we'll see. Be interesting to see. But of course, if teams don't offer Briere a package that he says, wow, okay, I need to accept this, it just ain't going to happen. The Carter Hart could remain in Philly a little bit longer. But another interesting topic I came across. So this is not a trade rumor from an NHL insider. This was more fans talking on social media. And there is an article, and I will share the article here where this thought came from. But it was suggesting that the Toronto Maple Leafs should trade one of their core 4 players, and it names William Nylander as the trade piece to obtain a true number 1 defenseman. They went through the entire roster, and obviously many people feel that Morgan Rielly would be way better valued, and he may not be a number 1. So a lot of people say he'd be a really strong number 2 if they had a defenseman on the team that was better than him. Now to me he's pretty good. I don't see any issues with Morgan Rielly being a number 1 defenseman. However, if he could be a number 2, they would be a way stronger team, a way deeper team. And it certainly wouldn't hurt things, especially if that number 1 defenseman was a right shot and he's a left shot. That gives them a different dynamic for power play, gives them some different looks. They could possibly even partner together, at least in some scenarios. And it could work out quite nicely. But the general consensus is that a lot of people still think that defense is more of the issue, which I'm not entirely convinced that it is. The Leafs have actually had some pretty good defensive metrics the last couple of years, and their D-core has improved a lot compared to what it was. And some of the earlier playoff blunders did boil down to not being able to defend enough. Couldn't the defense be better? Sure, it could be. Sheldon Keefe relying so heavily on Justin Hall was an issue, and Hall not expected to be back as an unrestricted free agent. So that should resolve itself, and they should be able to use some other defensemen, like a Timothy Liljegren, a little bit more, which is certainly a better option, in my opinion. But at the same time, do they bring in a top right shot D? Well, this article suggests that it's Seth Jones of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who signed long-term. Now, I will caution you this. Seth Jones, to me, I don't know that he's the best option out there. I know when he first went to Chicago, he certainly had some rough times defensively. I think Seth Jones could automatically become a major lightning rod in Toronto should he be traded there. Obviously, he chose Chicago because obviously the Jackets had to trade him because he wasn't going to sign. They did work things out to send him to a team where he would sign a long-term deal. I think he really likes being in Chicago. I'm sure he may not be thrilled going through a rebuild, but he does have a no-move clause, and he doesn't have to go anywhere if he doesn't want to. Now, would the Blackhawks really want to bring in a core forward player from the Leafs that it's, especially William Nylander, who's, 27, 28 years old in the next couple of years here? Does that make sense for them? It gives them a different dynamic. Maybe it would have to be a three-way deal. I just don't think the Chicago Blackhawks would want to make that trade. Would they be open to moving Seth Jones? I think they would be. Would they be willing to bring in another top player of sorts? Sure. The trade doesn't make sense to me, though, from Chicago side. And really, for Toronto side, if you're going to trade William Nylander and you're going to break up the core four, you better be bringing in a defenseman that, to me, that's better than Seth Jones. Or this is going to be a move that gets highly criticized by the fan base. The player coming in Jones's case, is going to be the ultimate whipping boy and lightning rod for the franchise if things don't go well. It's just going to be a ton of pressure, and I can see it blowing up in their face. If you're going to go out there on a limb and make a blockbuster-type trade, and you're going to trade a player of William Nylander's caliber, why not look around the league and see what else might be better? And to be honest, I've looked around, and I don't see a lot of options that really fit. But one name that would be interesting, and I don't know if this is going to be the best thing, and I'm not 100% sold that they're, an absolutely better team and playoff success will definitely come. But why not take a look at Erik Karlsson? We know the Sharks want to move him. We know they're likely willing to eat a little bit of the money. So, yes, he's making a ton of money, and cap-wise would be difficult. But if you trade Nylander, and if you think about what Nylander's next contract is going to be, he's making just shy of $7 million now. He's going to be going up. You know that. He's going to go up probably at least between 8 and 9 for sure. He was a 40-goal scorer this past year. So if he's making, let's say, I don't know what he agrees to, but if let's say he's $8.5 to $9 million, Karlsson, they retained $2.5 million on his salary, and it's not too drastically different. So they could make it work if they really needed to. Karlsson could be the number one defenseman. Riley number two, gives them a whole different dynamic. I mean, I'm not convinced that that's what they should do. But to me, if I was going to do that, I think that's better than Jones. But I'm not sure that it's the right thing to do. Like I said before, when the playoffs were going on, and when the Leafs were still in the playoffs and they were first eliminated, and I said, okay, I know that everybody's saying the core four have to be broken up. The Leafs can't run them back again. And as much as I agree that they should make some changes and they need to change the DNA of the team, look around the league and you take a look at this team and really analyze it. And it's not going to be easy. Tavares is not going anywhere. You don't want to trade Matthews. Marner or Nylander would be the one that would have to go. But the way their offense is run, so much of it goes through Mitch Marner. And he is the catalyst and the playmaker that really helps a lot of this stuff flow. You take him out of the mix, that's going to impact your other players. You take Nylander out, it's still going to be a big impact. And, do you really bring in a number one defenseman? Or what? I don't know. I just think that they're going to be playing with fire, and it's going to be, no matter what they do, it's going to be highly critical and risky. So it's challenging. So as much as they need to change, it's just really difficult for me, I think, at least, and I'm sure how others feel, to pinpoint what that change needs to be. Because it's not that easy. It's one thing to say they need to change. They got to go find that Matthew Tkachuk trade. But that, to me, is like a one, and I don't know what chance that you're going to find it. Like the Panthers and the Flames came together with that trade and hit it on the park, especially in the Florida side. How often does that happen? Not very, because it's hard to do. So it's just going to be really challenging, and I'm just not sure that they're going to find it. But to me, I would not trade Nylander for Jones 100%. I would consider it for Karlsson, but I'm not 100% sure I do that either, but at least I think about it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What do they need to do? Does this deal make sense to you? We'll talk further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.